My daughter joked that I was just the chauffeur when I dropped her off at college. She didn't know I had paid her tuition in full. That same night, I pulled the funds and let her learn what it really means to earn your seat. What happened next was rather unbelievable. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today's special shout-out goes to Sam Cadwell from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I always knew fatherhood would demand things of me that no one could prepare for: patience I didn't have, strength I couldn't fake, and sacrifices I'd never get credit for. But I never thought I'd feel so invisible on what should have been one of the proudest days of my life. The day I dropped my daughter, Layla, off at college was hot and heavy with humidity, the kind that made your shirt cling to your back and your patience wear thin. Still, I carried her mini fridge up 3 flights of dorm stairs like it weighed nothing. She scrolled on her phone the whole way up, barely saying a word unless she needed me to grab another box. I wasn't expecting a red carpet or a thank you speech, but I thought, I don't know, maybe a hug. Maybe a moment where she looked me in the eye and said she saw me, not just the man with the keys and the wallet, but her father, the one who'd been both mom and dad since her mother passed when she was 10. Instead, as I handed over the last bag and wiped the sweat from my brow, she smirked and said, "Thanks for the ride, chauffeur," before trotting off to join a group of girls in matching crop tops and distressed jeans. The word landed like a slap across the face, masked as a joke. I chuckled, because that's what you do when your heart breaks in public. But inside, something twisted. It was the ease with which she said it. Like I was just the help, just the ride. The drive back to my hotel was silent, except for the rattle in the dashboard I'd been meaning to fix for months. I could have stayed for the parent orientation dinner, but I didn't. I didn't want to sit at a table full of strangers pretending to be proud when all I felt was hollow. Back in the hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed with the TV on mute, the glow flickering across the room while I stared at my phone screen. I had the university's portal pulled up, the confirmation of the tuition payment I'd made in full just 2 weeks earlier still staring back at me. $43,712. I paid it from my savings, the one meant for retirement, or maybe a small cabin by the lake someday. She didn't know. I told her there were scholarships, grants, some loans. I didn't want her to take for granted what it took to get her there. But I also didn't expect her to forget what I'd done, what I always did. The thing about disrespect is, it doesn't start with yelling. It starts with small things. Entitlement wrapped in humor. Shrugs instead of thanks. A daughter looking at her father and not seeing the 5 a.m. shifts, the cold dinners eaten alone, the Christmas gifts bought on layaway. I thought I'd given her everything she needed. Turns out, I'd left one lesson out. That night, I logged back into the university portal. I stared at the Manage Your Payment Plan button until my thumb moved on its own. I clicked. I reversed the wire transfer. And just like that, I stopped being the chauffeur. I didn't sleep that night. I just laid there on top of the stiff hotel comforter, staring at the ceiling as if it could offer some kind of answer. My chest felt tight, not angry tight, more like heartbreak mixed with resolve. A strange calm had settled over me. Like something inevitable had finally happened, and I was just catching up to it. The university made it easier than I thought to reverse the payment. Too easy, in fact. One call to the bursar's office. One explanation that the payment was made in error, because in a way, it was. It was a mistake to give so much without boundaries. A mistake to assume she'd automatically understand the cost just because she carried my last name. The woman on the phone didn't ask many questions. She said the funds would be retracted within a few business days, and that Layla's account would reflect the change immediately. I could picture her reaction already, logging in between classes, maybe trying to buy her overpriced biology textbook, and realizing her account was suddenly flagged for non-payment. She'd probably think it was a glitch. Then she'd call me. And I knew how that call would go. I wasn't being vindictive. I didn't want to hurt her. But there's a kind of pain that comes from watching someone you love morph into someone who only sees you as a tool, a wallet, a means to an end. I'd felt it building over the last few years. First when she started treating my advice like background noise, Then when she rolled her eyes at dinner and said I was too old to understand what it's like now. And now this, calling me her chauffeur. She didn't say it with malice. That almost made it worse. It was casual, thoughtless. Like my love and labor were expected, never earned. I went home the next morning. The house was too quiet. Her room still smelled like that vanilla perfume she always overused. Her bed was neatly made for once. There was a half-finished coffee mug on the desk. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I walked into my room and shut the door. That weekend, I cleaned the garage just to keep busy. Found old boxes of her drawings from kindergarten. One had a stick figure version of me labeled, "My dad, my hero." I sat down on the concrete floor and just stared at it for a while, wondering when I stopped being that guy in her eyes. Maybe when I stopped saying no. By Sunday night, I'd rehearsed the conversation a dozen ways. Maybe she'd apologize right away. Maybe she'd double down and call me crazy. I didn't know. But I knew one thing for sure. She was about to learn what it meant to earn something. Really earn it. Not because it was handed to her, but because she showed up with respect and grit. That's what life is. And if I failed to teach her that before, I wasn't going to keep failing now. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. I was elbow deep in oil changes at the shop, my sleeves rolled up, grease under my nails, sweat dotting my forehead. I almost didn't hear it over the hum of the compressor, but when I checked the screen and saw Layla's name, something in me tensed. "Hey," I answered, keeping my voice even. "Dad," she said, no pleasantries. "Did something happen with my tuition?" There it was. No hi. No, how are you? No trace of the girl who used to call me every night during her first week of middle school because she couldn't fall asleep unless I said goodnight. Just panic and entitlement wrapped up in one breathless demand. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked outside, away from the noise. "What do you mean?" I asked, playing it cool. "The school sent me an email saying my payment didn't go through. They said my account's flagged and I can't register for next semester." I thought you said it was handled." "It was handled," I said, slow and steady. Then I unhandled it. There was silence. "Then, what does that mean?" "It means," I said, "I took the money back." "You what?" Her voice pitched up like a siren. "Are you serious right now? You can't just do that, Dad." "What am I supposed to do?" "That depends," I said. "Do you want the polite answer or the honest one?" She sputtered. "This isn't funny. You can't just pull support without telling me. That's wrong." "Oh," I said, my voice calm and sharp all at once. "Like calling your father a chauffeur while he carries your crap up 3 flights of stairs?" Her silence was a slap. "I paid your tuition in full," I continued, "not because I needed her to grovel, but because I needed her to hear it. I did it weeks ago, out of my retirement fund. You never asked where the money came from. You just assumed it wasn't your problem. And then you joked about me like I was an Uber driver." "Dad, it was a joke," she said, voice softer now. "I didn't mean it like that. Intent doesn't erase impact, Layla. You think I work 60 hours a week because I enjoy smelling like diesel and having arthritis in both hands? Everything I did was to get you to that dorm. And you made it clear I'm nothing more than the help." She didn't respond. I could hear her breathing, the way she always did when she was trying not to cry. "So," I said finally, "you want to know what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to figure it out. Talk to financial aid. Get a job. Apply for scholarships. Call your advisor. Do what millions of other students do every day. Because until you fix your attitude, I'm done fixing your life." Her voice cracked. "So that's it? You're just cutting me off?" I closed my eyes and let the words come slow, because they were heavy. "No, Layla, I'm not cutting you off. I'm letting you grow up." She hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at the screen for a long time after that, the call log glowing in the afternoon sun. My hands were still dirty, and for once, I didn't wipe them clean. She showed up 3 days later. I'd just gotten home from work, the kind of day that grinds your bones. Trucks backed up, customers griping, one of the new hires calling out sick. I'd barely kicked off my boots when I heard the knock. Not the polite kind, either. Sharp, insistent, like someone demanding entry instead of asking for it. I opened the door, and there she was, Layla, in her oversized hoodie, face blotchy from crying, eyes wild with fury. "Can I come in?" she snapped, already pushing past me before I could answer. She dropped her bag by the couch and started pacing, arms crossed tight like she was holding herself together by force. I closed the door quietly and leaned against it, waiting. "You humiliated me," she said, spinning on her heel to face me. "Do you know what it's like to find out your tuition's unpaid from the registrar's office?" I had to sit in front of some admin lady while she looked at me like I was a charity case. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? I didn't flinch. And do you have any idea how it feels to be treated like an afterthought by your own kid? That's not what this is about, she snapped. I raised an eyebrow. Isn't it? She threw her hands up. It was a joke, Dad. A stupid comment. I didn't mean anything by it. I stepped forward then, not yelling, not accusing, just speaking plainly. It wasn't the first comment, Layla. It was the last straw. You've been treating me like an ATM with a toolbox for years. You don't say thank you. You don't ask. You expect. And when I give, it's never enough. When I set a boundary, I'm the bad guy. Well, I'm done being your cushion. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She just stood there, stunned, as if no one had ever told her no with that kind of finality before. I gave you everything I had, I said, quieter now. Money, time, sacrifices you'll probably never know about. I gave you a life I had to fight for every damn day. And somewhere along the way, you started thinking it was owed to you. That I was supposed to make it easy. But easy isn't love, Layla. Easy is just convenient. She blinked hard, arms still wrapped tight around herself. So what now? She whispered. I'm supposed to, what, drop out? No, I said. You're supposed to figure it out. Like I did. Like your mother would have wanted you to. Tears welled in her eyes then, and for the first time in years, she didn't try to hide them. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't realize. I nodded. I know. But that's the thing about growing up. Realizing doesn't always come with comfort. Sometimes it comes with consequences. She sat down on the couch, staring at the floor. I didn't go to her. I didn't offer to fix it. I just let the silence stretch, uncomfortable but necessary. After a long pause, she said, Can I stay the night? Of course, I said. Your room's still there. But in the morning, you start figuring things out. I won't rescue you, Layla. Not until you start respecting the one person who always showed up. She nodded slowly. And for once, she didn't argue. That night, the house was quiet, but not in that lonely way. More like the air was finally clearing. After she left the next morning, the house felt still. Not the kind of silence you dread after a fight, or the suffocating quiet of grief. This was something else, like standing in a room that had finally been aired out after years of stale air. I stood by the window with my coffee, watching her car pull out of the driveway. She didn't slam the door. Didn't peel out like she used to when she was trying to make a statement. She just left, like someone who understood, for the first time, that not every bridge stays intact if you keep walking over it without looking back. Days passed without a word. I checked my phone more times than I care to admit. Not because I expected a thank you or a change of heart, but because part of me still clung to hope, quiet, tired hope, that she'd try. Not for money, not for a handout, but for me. The guys at the shop noticed. Jesse asked if I was okay one afternoon while we were changing out a radiator. I shrugged it off, said I was just tired. The truth is, I was exhausted in ways that sleep couldn't fix. Not from work, from carrying resentment I didn't know I had until it spilled over. One evening I sat in her room. I hadn't touched it since she moved out, but I opened the door and let myself stand in the mess of it. The perfume bottles on the dresser, the mismatched socks still stuffed in the corner. On her corkboard above the desk were old concert tickets, a photo of her and her mom, and a post-it that read, Make him proud. I don't know how long I stood there, just looking. Long enough for the light to shift and paint the walls orange. Long enough for regret to sneak in. Regret not for what I did, but for how long it took me to do it. And then, a week later, the letter arrived. A real letter. Handwritten. Not a text. Not an email. Not a voicemail with tears and static. Just a plain envelope, addressed in her cursive, no return address, like she wanted to make sure I'd read it without bias. I sat at the kitchen table and opened it slowly, like it might fall apart if I rushed it. Dad, I've rewritten this 3 times. Every version sounded either too proud or too desperate. So I'm just going to say it. I'm sorry. Not just for what I said at school. For all of it. For years of taking you for granted. for not asking how you were doing, for treating your sacrifices like they were automatic. You were never just my chauffeur. You were the engine, the wheels, the map, and the gas money. You were everything, and I didn't see it until it was gone. I've been talking to the financial aid office. I applied for work study and 2 emergency grants. I'm picking up shifts at the bookstore. It's not easy, but I'm learning. I don't expect you to fix it. I just hope we're not beyond fixing. Love, Layla. I read it 3 times before folding it back along its original creases. My hands were shaking. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't moved, God, I was, but because I felt something sturdier than tears. I felt peace. She was learning. The kind of lesson I couldn't have taught her with words, or lectures, or checkbooks. She was becoming the kind of person who didn't need saving, just understanding. And for the first time in a long time, I started to believe we'd make it. We met at a little diner halfway between campus and home, the kind with vinyl booths and stale coffee that somehow tasted like comfort. I got there early, ordered black coffee, and sat by the window so I could see her pull in. I wasn't nervous, just wary. I'd gone months waiting for her to grow, to recognize the value of what she'd been handed. Now that she had, I wasn't sure what version of her would walk through that door. When she did, I almost didn't recognize her, not because she looked different, but because she moved different. Her stride was smaller, her eyes more focused, like someone who had been knocked down a few pegs and learned to look where she was going. "Hey," she said, sliding into the booth. "Hey." We sat in silence for a few moments, the waitress topping off my coffee and taking her order, a water and eggs, nothing fancy. She glanced up at me a few times, like she wasn't sure how to start. So I did it for her. "I got your letter." She nodded slowly. I meant every word. I studied her for a long moment. Her hoodie was the same, but there were faint calluses on her hands, probably from handling books and moving boxes. Her nails weren't manicured. Her phone didn't leave her bag. She looked humbled, and something about that made me both sad and proud. "I know you did," I said. "That's why I'm here." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. "I'm trying, Dad. I've never worked this hard for anything before, but I needed to." "I see that now." I nodded. "Good. That's what I wanted." She looked down. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. If I ever needed help again, like real help, not just bailing me out, would you be willing to?" "I don't know. Talk it through with me?" "Not just say no, but help me figure out how to earn it." I looked her in the eye and gave the smallest, most honest smile I could manage. "That's the only kind of help I'll give from now on." She nodded, eyes glassy. "Fair." We talked more after that. About her classes. Her roommate. The part-time job she picked up shelving books at the library. She told me about the scholarship essay she was writing about resilience and the cost of pride. She didn't say it, but I knew. I was the cost she'd written about. When the check came, she reached for her wallet. I didn't stop her. She paid. It was a small thing, maybe even symbolic, but to me, it was a milestone. A girl who once joked I was her chauffeur now understood the value of the ride. Not just what it cost me, but what it taught her. As we walked to our cars, she turned and asked, "Do you think Mom would be proud?" I paused. "I think she'd be proud of you for learning to stand on your own. But I know she'd be proud of you for coming back." She nodded, really hugged me, and then pulled away. We didn't make promises. Didn't tie it all up in a bow. Life wasn't like that. But as I watched her drive off, I felt a peace settle into me that I hadn't known in years. This was no longer a story about what I gave. It was about what I withheld and why. And standing there in the parking lot, coffee still warm in my chest, I knew I'd made the right call. Sometimes, love isn't about giving everything. Sometimes, it's about knowing when to stop. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. We post powerful, real-life inspired narratives every day, stories about family, boundaries, growth, and the moments that change everything. Join the community and let us know in the comments what you would have done in this situation. See you soon in our next story.